Welcome and thank you everyone for being here tonight. I just wanted to say a quick thank you from the Michelson 20 Million Minds Foundation and Michelson Philanthropies. We're very excited to have a lively discussion tonight. We're very lucky to have Councilman Curren with us here tonight, so I just wanted to do a quick introduction. The Councilman was elected to serve Council District 9 in 2013 and has since been overwhelmingly reelected by residents, which comes at no surprise given his extraordinary leadership and commitment to making South LA a vibrant place where people want to live and work and play. Today's venue serves as a prime example of his efforts. So with that being said, please come on stage and give a warm welcome to Councilman Price.
Thank you, and thanks for that warm introduction. You read it just like I wrote it. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. Welcome to first of all, welcome to the new ninth, huh? We're real excited. And this is not just any new ninth, but this is a new ninth that now has a new mayor-elect, Curren Bass. It's official. And so we're just really excited about not only her leadership, but the leadership right here at the Beehive. And we're just so proud of Martin and the team that have created a wonderland of possibilities. And certainly they have a lot of notoriety for being the largest property owner, affordable housing owner in our city. But the real excitement that they generate is right here at the Beehive. A real learning center, a experiment of technology, and a real demonstration of what's possible. And so if you haven't had a chance, take a look around. Lots of folks that can provide some information to you about what's going on here. But you'll be inspired like we're inspired. It's my pleasure to, again, welcome you here today to Connecting California 10, Solving the Digital Divide. Town hall, long overdue town hall, as we explore ways to eliminate digital discrimination, right? We have all kinds of discrimination, but digital discrimination, I think, is important. And so we appreciate the Michelson Foundation, and you're going to be hearing from the man himself in a minute, but he and his partners that have come together, again, to not only address a problem, but to create some opportunities that we are very, very excited about. And I also know that we're joined by two allies in the work, the California Community Foundation, whose most recent research has revealed another layer of discriminatory practices, as well as the FCC Special Advisor, Sanford Williams. I didn't meet Sanford. Sanford, good to meet you, sir. Your reputation precedes you as well. And so we appreciate all the good, yes, give it up. All the good work that Mr. Williams is doing in DC and here in California, and we appreciate his leadership at both areas. But these folks are going to join us a little later for a fireside chat, and I think you're going to be impressed and inspired. Last but not least, of course, a shout out to SOLA. We mentioned them again. We are on the campus of possibilities, and so this is it has become an exciting workshop in wonderland, especially for our youth, If you have a chance, go take a look at the esports pavilion, for example. Just the tremendous stuff going on. We've got some potential music makers in there doing some stuff. And so, again, all of this is a part of the new ninth and a part of really making a difference and making a change. National data tells us that the two populations most impacted by the digital divide are people of color and those in urban areas and in rural communities. And that's why events like this are so much more important, because it focuses on where the real needs are. And I couldn't be think of a more perfect place to address the digital discrimination practices that continue to harm Black and brown low-income communities than right here. For years now, Solar Impact Foundation has been at the forefront doing their part to bridge the divide here in South LA. It's here on the campus where they made huge strides, most recently helping to create a state-of-the-art technology and entrepreneurial center, to help develop future tech leaders And that's what makes this space so exciting, because it is a playground, if you will, for the young, and for the young at heart. This is a place where our kids come after school to learn about entertainment, music, technology, esports, video game design, or entrepreneurship. And they have wonderful examples and leaders to show them the way. Let's give it up again for the SOLA. Now, the town hall today brings advocates and community champions together for an important conversation and a renewed commitment so that no one is left behind. No one is left behind in our connected world. And we know frequently that happens, especially in urban areas and underserved areas like mine. But, you know, we're not going to be underserved for long because we want to make sure. That's right. You can clap on that, too. And we're certainly amongst the giants on the ground that are putting their best foot forward in the name of equitable opportunities in tech for South LA. You know, here in the 9th District, it's become apparent, especially during the onset of COVID-19, that our community was not only facing health disparities, but digital disparities as well. And so we became very intentional in our strategy to help bring partners that could provide the necessary resources available to give our neighbors just a fair chance, just a shot at being successful. And so we worked with our partners, giving out laptops, hotspots, internet service, and we've been able to work towards opening the doors and pathways for individuals to really achieve success. And so I'm really excited to share the next phase of this digital empowerment coming soon to Council District 9 with the Slauson Connect. I had a chance to just mention this briefly to some of you before, but Slauson Connect is a $30 million innovative youth development center, which is going to be located on Slauson, around the corner, on Slauson, between Budlong and Normandy Avenue, okay? A 2-acre linear park that had been discarded by Metro has certainly been repurposed, and so we're very, very excited. Thank you. And my mother thanks you. But this transformational community asset is going to be the new epicenter of technology and youth development in our community. It's going to be a sister or a brother to the facility here. This is the mothership, make no mistake about it. But we are just excited about the opportunities of expanding and growing. The center we're proposing is going to feature creative labs, computer rooms, after-school programming, as well as a 2-acre park, botanical gardens, pedestrian and bike pathways, play areas, recreational areas, and exercise areas, and much, much more. Recently, on the city level, Mayor Garcetti introduced Vision Lab at South LA. Now, this is an innovative program that was designed for South LA residents who are 18 years and older and who have ideas that to foster digital inclusion in our community. So remember that term, Vision Lab at South LA. It was launched with an inaugural class of 15 entrepreneurs who participated in a 12-week program to turn their ideas into successful businesses. What a concept. Ideas into business. This latest initiative is part of a $17 million citywide effort that's going to expand public Wi-Fi and the modernization of public computer labs, providing greater access to low-cost internet to Angelenos. We all know that eliminating discrimination is not something that can be done alone. And so we need all hands on deck to make sure that both the public and the private sector are involved. And again, that's what makes this facility so exciting, because there's public sector, private sector, and philanthropic support coming together. We certainly need our political leaders to continue to think outside the box to address the practices that are continuing to negatively impact communities of color, and to implement policies that promote advancement. With the initiatives such as Slauson Connect, the Vision Lab, and certainly the SOLA programs here, we know that your political leaders here in LA are implementing policies that are going to propel Angelenos forward. And again, identifying those individuals those organizations, those resources that frequently are overlooked and who do not have a chance to really make it. So we're imagining a future where the digital discrimination doesn't exist. And I look forward to everyone here being able to see the promise and the potential of the new South Central Los Angeles. Let me close by thanking Dr. Michelson and the foundation for hosting this event. The foundation has been a tireless education and digital equity advocate, not just here in LA, but throughout the state of California for more than a decade. And so again, Doctor, we share the excitement that you have exhibited and that you project. And we know that working together works. And so Dr. Michelson, again, is a board-certified orthopedic spinal surgeon. So it's not like he has nothing else to do, right? But he is a renowned inventor, philanthropist, and founder of a network of foundations right here in Los Angeles. His commitment to advancing digital equity helps to stimulate the kind of progress that's so important amongst all communities. And so it brings us here together. And so, again, without further ado, it's a pleasure to warmly welcome Dr. Michelson.
Please forgive my voice if it fails. I've got something on one of my vocal cords. Anyway, spectacular venue. It's wonderful to see somebody who loves her district, as that man clearly does. Something that came to mind when I was walking through there was these e-games are addicting, and there's no real payoff. It's not like they're actually giving them something at the end of the day. And they'll spend real money to buy e-money in that universe to continue to play the games. So why can't we get Activision or someone to gamify remedial education? So one of our other interests was prisons. And 2/3 of the people that get out of prison are back in 3 years. And it's not a mystery because they can't read and they can't write and they can't get a job and you can't rent a place to live. So why can't we remedialize that education by e-gaming it? So it's just something to think about. And the other thing to think about that's interesting, has nothing to do with what I'm supposed to be talking to you about, is as a parent, you're saying to your kids, stop, get off the e-games. They're playing with the joystick and stuff. And actually, we're wrong. We're all wrong. Because I am a spine surgeon, and we scrub, and we go in the OR, and we do all this stuff. But the truth is, these kids, with their joysticks and their bombers, and they're running 3 things at once, when they invent the world that's going to come, the surgeons will be sitting with their feet up on a desk, running a joystick to an automation that'll be doing the surgery better than I ever could have. So we need to say to them, keep doing that. But anyway, that's not why I'm here. So let me start by saying that we're blessed in the state of California. We had a governor, Newsom, a Speaker of the House, Anthony Rendon, and a pro tem, Tony Atkins, who saw their way to appropriate $6.5 billion to end the digital divide in California. And that was long before the federal government saw their way to consider the problem. So we do live in a remarkable state. Now, my experience is that there is always slippage between what these politicians intend to see happen and what actually happens. And we all have to be very careful to make sure that this money, which is to build out the infrastructure so people year after year after year will benefit from having low-cost, high-speed internet, that money does not get subverted into being supplementary payments to the normal internet providers, which would exhaust the money and leave us with nothing going forward. And that is a real danger. So we all need to be very vigilant about that. Now, the good news is that the FCC has a year to try to figure this out. And they are all ears. They're on a listening tour. And so this is our chance to talk with them to make sure this turns out right. By the way, this is actually my turn to confess something. This is our 10th convening of Connect California. And during the previous 9 sessions, we had people participate from all over the country, people that knew a lot more than we did, and people who are participating to learn from those people. And I need to apologize because my vision wasn't big enough. It should have been connecting the United States. So we were just looking at California. It turned out to be much bigger than that. The people who helped us, the people who came to learn, they were all over the country, and the problems all over the country. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Michelson. It is my pleasure now to introduce our 2 main speakers for the evening, Shayna and Sanford Williams. So we will be having a presentation from each of them briefly, and then we'll move into the town hall portion. So Sanford is a lecturer of law at UCLA. He's also a special advisor to Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel and a deputy managing director at the Federal Communications Commission. Sanford and his wife, Dr. Anastasia Williams, have 3 children, Kiara, Sanford, and Nia. Sanford graduated from Newark Academy in New Jersey in 1983 and then enrolled at Cornell University at the age of 15, where he earned his undergraduate degree in operations research and industrial engineering. Sanford was elected to the Manassas City, Virginia School Board in 2010 and served as a member until 2021 and was the chair from 2018 to 2021. Mr. Williams is the first African-American chairman of the Manassas City School Board, and he is a member of the board of directors of Kids in the Spotlight, a Los Angeles County-based organization that helps foster youth heal and grow from trauma through the power of storytelling and filmmaking. Shayna England, our second speaker, is the founder and CEO of 42 Comms, a strategic advisory firm, and is the director of the Digital Equity Initiative at the California Community Foundation. Shayna spent more than 2 decades earning her stripes in the take no prisoners world of politics, where she learned to find a way to, or make one. She founded, scaled, and sold 2 political communications firms, published sector-leading research, served as the managing director for North America for Change.org, built strategic communications for Curren, a neurotech company, and for a variety of mission-driven venture funds. Shayna is a published expert in leadership and change management and was named an Influencer 50 by Campaigns and Elections magazine. We're very lucky to have both of them here tonight, and I'm happy to invite Sanford to come on up first and tell us a little bit about what the FCC is doing, as well as share some remarks from the chairwoman.
Thank you very much. First, I have to say it's great to be here at California. Even though I work in DC, I'm totally remote. I've been in Pasadena for about a year now. My first winter with no snow, and this is like just awesome. So you guys have it lucky. I mean, you're lucky. You appreciate it. So I have some remarks from the chairwoman also for myself, but I'm kind of like Dr. Michelson and going to go off script for a second. I teach at UCLA Law School, administrative law. I've done it for about a year now. I love my students. And one thing that you said, Dr. Michelson, resonated with me a lot. I actually tell my students, I said, when you have legislation, especially in DC, but generally, look at intent versus impact. So many times politicians intend something, but the actual impact is something different. And if you don't evaluate that, how do you know if it's successful or not? Something else you mentioned, which is, again, off topic, but very important. One thing we work on a lot is prison inmate calling reform. It is just a travesty how much money folks, and this is me talking, not the FCC, but me talking, so just to be clear, but a travesty how much folks pay when they're incarcerated, and no one does anything about it. So California has recently made it free, I guess, for inmates to call. The FCC has done a lot in that area, so there's so much to do that's related to digital equity and other issues, so thank you for doing that work. But now to my prepared remarks. I hope I can read them because this print is kind of small. So first from the chairwoman. She wishes she could be here, but she's very busy, so I'm going to read some remarks on her behalf from a statement she made earlier this year. She says, in the very first sentence of the Communications Act, Congress directs the Federal Communications Commission to help make communication services available to all the people of the United States without discrimination. But it is time to address it with new urgency. We can do this. We need to. It's about equity, opportunity, and making it possible for everyone to have a fair shot at 21st century success. It's about the law. So with this proceeding, and the proceeding that we're doing for digital discrimination, she's referring to, we seek to identify the policies and practices that can lead to digital discrimination, recognizing that this won't be easy. We're going to do it in a thoughtful way, starting with today's notice of inquiry, and I'll talk about that a little later. The law, the IIJA, instructs us to look at digital discrimination, and we're doing that right now. We got $14.2 billion from Congress, which in my second job at the FCC as managing director, I'm overseeing. We're making a huge difference. I don't want to get out in front of the chairwoman, but I can say today that we're approaching 15 million folks served, which is awesome. But again, taking my FCC hat off for a second, that 15 million is so impressive and incredible, but there's so much more that needs to be done, and we need to have folks like you working to help us get there. She concluded the remarks, and this is her talking, not me. The proceeding is a priority for the FCC, and it is led by 3 dynamos from our staff, Dewana Terry, Sanford Williams, and Alejandro Rourke, who run the task force to prevent digital discrimination. But the effort does not stop there. We recharted the Communications Equity and Diversity Council, and I see Faith Bautista, one of the members here of that council. And we expanded it to a mission beyond media to include diversity and equity across the technology sector. And she concludes by saying, John Lewis said, every generation leaves behind a legacy. What is the legacy that we want to leave behind? And she says, I'm the first woman ever confirmed as chair of the FCC, and she is the first woman chair. She's awesome. I came in with her in 1999 to the commission. I love her heart and her passion for equity. But she says, here's what I want to leave behind. A diverse agency that is more committed than ever before to realizing the power of broadband for all. I believe that goal is within reach. Now let's use this proceeding to help us make it happen. So those are her remarks. And in my remarks, I have bigger print, so it'll be easier to read. So good evening, and thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to speak with you. I especially want to thank the Michelson Foundation, Miguel Leon, who's been an awesome partner since I've known him for the last year, and Pasadena buddy, Cristal Mojica, and Claudia Vasquez of the foundation, who've been awesome in terms of setting this up. And I have to tell you, I like talking to folks, and Cristal and I talked about this, and she was a little bit nervous. Where are you at, Cristal? I don't know you. Cristal, this is, she's not looking at me. Anyway, this is awesome. She did an awesome job. She was kind of nervous and worried, but please give her a hand, because this is like phenomenal. So great job. This is for you. All right. And finally, I want to thank Dr. Michelson. I briefly spoke with him. I didn't tell him, my wife's a pediatrician. We've been married for 34 years this year, so we went through undergrad, med school, residency, all that stuff together, having her own practice. Our son is a physician, he's a pediatrician, and his wife is OBGYN. So I went through the process with them as well. That is a hard process, all of it. So just to finish it is incredible, but to finish it and have the heart to do what he does with his foundation, to me, is so impressive. So thank you for all you're doing. I really appreciate it. Okay, back to my remarks, okay? At the FCC, we're tasked with providing national leadership in the space to address broadband access and digital discrimination. I believe digital discrimination is a lack of equal access to digital or broadband resources, and I believe equal access to these resources is a human right. Again, a human right, not just something that's fun to have, but it's a human right. I serve a few roles at the FCC. I'm the Deputy Managing Director, which means I'm over operations, and I'm also an advisor to the Chairwoman on many issues, including this. I also help run the ACP program, the $14.2 billion program, which I think about every day because we're always worried about how the money's being spent. But it's a burden in some ways, but it's a blessing in most ways. Chairwoman Rosenworcel is passionate about providing equitable broadband access to all Americans. She coined the term homework gap about 10 years ago. She's great to work with, and I share her passion. I'm also blessed to have experiences in a couple other areas. When I was on the school board, I mentioned to Dr. Michelson, I was on the school board for 11 years in Manassas. We spend so much money on things like textbooks and things that if we could use it and divert to other areas, we could make such a big difference. Every year we had millions of dollars of unmet need. And during the pandemic, I really saw firsthand how it impacted schools. I would go into the schools, teachers would often teach Zoom classes there, and you'd see kids at home, some were paying attention, but others taking care of siblings and not being able to, do what they needed to do. And others didn't have access for a while because they may have, for example, one computer and the dad had to work or the mom had to work or an uncle or aunt had to use computers, so they use their phones for Zoom or whatever. And it was just heartbreaking in so many ways. So this digital equity is very important in education. I was also on the board of the University of Virginia Hospitals Group. And with the physicians group, we went straight to telehealth. Telehealth, obviously health is so important, and a lot of times folks did not have access or ability to have computers or to be able to do their telehealth visits, which was a problem. So digital equity is important to that as well. As I turn the page, don't worry, I'm almost done. There's a quote that I found a couple years ago that I love. It says, "Trauma leaves imprints on body, mind, and soul." The pandemic has left the imprint of trauma on the U.S. in many ways. The trauma was exacerbated by an inequitable access to broadband. One of our foremost goals of the Commission is to ensure that every person in the U.S. has equal access, affordable broadband across the country. Never before has the need for such access been greater. From telehealth to education to work, everybody in our country deserves and must have equal broadband access. And I'm going to go off script again. There's some of my friends here, like Brenda Villanueva with Curren, Shayna England, who's going to be up here in a second, who I've been so blessed to meet in the last year. And Dr. Michelson's correct about another thing as well. I work with all 50 states. Y'all got it going on here. I said, we got it going on. Come here now in California because you are so far ahead of the nation, and hopefully we can catch up. And I don't say that just because I'm here, because, it really is true. I teach at UCLA Law School, as I mentioned. I told my class recently that they may be surprised to find sometimes that in DC, on the Hill and where I work, folks can get kind of myopic. They're like DC-centric, DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, and they kind of forget there's a whole big country out there. But the pandemic kind of brought home that, it's not just DC. And it's helpful in that fact because things like the ACP that we've been talking about for years weren't able to get done until we had the pandemic. And in conclusion, I will just say that in May of this year, we started a proceeding to look at, March of this year, to look at digital discrimination. We got comments and reply comments. We're going to work on a notice of proposed rulemaking, which is the rules we're going to propose. We're going to seek comment on that. And Congress has told us by November 2023, we must have rules in place. So that's our goal. So make sure you keep track of those proceedings because we need comments from everyone, not just the folks who always talk to us. And we will be doing listening tours. We started that already. And something that don't want to get out in front of the chairwoman yet, but we're looking at different spaces to do listening tours across the country. And I'll just say that since one of her staff is here and wants to stay here, keep informed. And I'll be talking to some folks about that going forward. I'm going to stop here and let Shayna talk, but I look forward to the conversation. And I thank you all for being here. I can't thank you enough. We can't do this all, again, Dr. Michelson said, without everybody helping. We need government, councilmen, councilwomen. We need everybody to be involved and engaged. So please, keep up what you're doing, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you very much.
I should have insisted on going first so I wouldn't have to follow that, but thank you, Sanford. I'm Shayna England. I'm the director of the Digital Equity Initiative, and I wanted to start with this slide because really what I get to do is work with the amazing leaders and staff and community in all of these extraordinary organizations that are doing extraordinary work all over LA County. And I see Ray is taking a picture, so that's Ray from GPSN. A whole bunch of our partners are here, and it's really this set of organizations. This is the Digital Equity LA Coalition. My job and along with my deputy director, Natalie, our job, we provide financial support and programmatic support to this incredible coalition. So everything I'm about to say is really thanks to and hopefully well representing these amazing organizations who, importantly, I want to draw attention to, these are organizations that work in every sector in LA County where there is need. So education and healthcare and climate justice, transportation, community development, economic development. For every one of these organizations, digital equity is a kind of necessary precondition and not their primary mission. And we think that's really important because, as Sanford said, yes, the access to the internet is a human right. It is also just an absolutely necessary precondition these days to actually participating and being an active member of society, to having a job, to learning, to getting health care. So I think really important to kind of keep this very large, awesome coalition in mind as we talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. Thank you. So in specific, we do a lot of work, but one of the kind of recent things that we've done has been to amplify a very specific form of what we see as discrimination and something that really exacerbates the digital divide here in LA. So a little bit of background, what we know from both a ton of survey data over many decades and in basically every geography is that when you ask people who don't have internet at home, why not? They overwhelmingly say it's because they can't afford it, or because what they can afford is not high enough quality to be worth the expense. And we had that experience, kind of again, all of those organizations that we just looked at work with people on the ground every day and had, anecdotes after anecdotes after anecdotes of where that's true. But what we wanted to look at was, okay, so what does that mean? When you say you can't afford it, when you say you try to get service if it's too expensive, or what just being offered isn't worth the price, what does that really mean? So we set out to take a snapshot of what are people being asked to pay in LA County for internet. And I will say as we started to do it, as we started to kind of do this work, we were very surprised and alarmed at some initial kind of early findings that, if you live in a community that is higher poverty, if you live in a community that has a high propensity of immigrant families, if you live in a community that is mostly renters, you are being offered much higher prices for lower service from the major providers in LA. And we kept kind of waiting to get enough data to be like, no, those were outliers. And the kind of alarming and surprising and I think infuriating thing that we found was that the more data we looked at, the more that pattern held. We weren't finding outliers, we were identifying a pattern. And so I want to talk a little bit about what that pattern is, how it fits into this broader picture, and what we can and should come together to do about it. So LA Times covered us, which was great, and I couldn't have written a better headline myself. I didn't write it. We found inequity in internet charges and that wealthy enclaves in LA enjoy lower prices than poorer ones. And big picture, here's our findings. Published pricing, and I want to be very clear, in this year, 2022, we still have no access to data around what these companies are actually charging whom and for what. So the only data that we have access to is what they publish, and what they publish is their advertised offers. So any one of you can go replicate this, go put your address in the Charter Spectrum website and see what they try to sell you for internet. and put it in for your neighbors and your friends, and you'll see different things. But that was what we looked at, is only what's on their website. What is on their website is they offer their best offers, high speed at low cost in the highest income communities in LA County. Not only that, but they also offer worse terms and conditions in lower income communities. So if you live, and we're gonna go through some examples, but if what you want is a great rate for fast, reliable internet, you should move to Beverly Hills, because you will get an amazing offer, and that offer will be good for 2 years. Whereas if you don't live in Beverly Hills and you live in, say, Watts or South LA, that you will be offered a much higher price, sometimes as much as $50 more a month, and that price will only be good for 1 year before it goes up. And then lastly, the low-cost plans that Charter has gotten a lot of kind of good press on, they don't actually consistently advertise them in the communities where they would be most needed. So, thank you. So just a few case studies to show you what we mean here. So this is an address, and these are screenshots from the Spectrum website, and we have a screenshot for every single data point in our report. An address in Watts, in a community, this is a census tract that has a poverty rate of 31%. You can see the Internet Ultra, which is the reason that we focus on Internet Ultra is because that is the only service level that is offered at every single address. Internet Ultra in Watts is offered for $70 a month, and that price is good for 1 year. You go over to Manhattan Beach, a poverty rate of 2%, that same Internet Ultra is offered for $30 a month, and that price is guaranteed for 2 years. Whittier, let's go to the other side of LA County. Whittier, these two addresses are about 3 miles apart. The poverty rate of 22%, that census tract is mostly apartment buildings, so it's mostly renters. Again, you see Internet Ultra is offered for $70 a month. That's guaranteed for 1 year before it goes up. 3 miles away, single family home, poverty rate of 12%. Internet Ultra is $30 a month, guaranteed for 2 years. Sylmar, this one always kind of blows my mind because you could walk very easily between these two addresses. It's not even a mile away. Apartment buildings, again, poverty rate of 31%. Internet Ultra is $70 a month before it goes up after 1 year. Less than a mile away. Single family homes, low poverty rate neighborhood, $30 a month, guaranteed for 2 years. And then one more, just because, again, we could go through all of these, but I won't, I promise. But kind of blows my mind. This one, too. So in Compton, poverty rate of 30%. You can see it all the way across the board. The lowest service tier that is offered at that address in Compton is their 300 megabits per second internet. That's at $50 a month for 1 year. You go to it's 10 miles to drive. It's about 5 miles as the crow flies. Both are in the city of LA, so same permitting, everything else. Poverty rate of 1% in Mar Vista, and that same internet is $20 a month. And that disparity goes all the way down through all of their service tiers. And you get to their fastest one at Internet Gig, and that one, again, 90 versus 40, a $50 a month difference. So let's telescope out, in case you're not already furious with me. Let's look at South LA, at the historically black and overwhelmingly black and brown communities. Every single address we looked at had that $70 a month, guaranteed for just 1 year for Internet Ultra. Mar Vista, every address that we looked at in Mar Vista was at $30 a month, guaranteed for 2 years for that same service. And looking at Sella, you can see, I don't know how well you can see it, but that cluster of addresses in Sella, again, $70 a month, compared to Malibu, Beverly Hills, San Marino, Cerritos, $40 a month. And actually, we need to update this slide because when we went back to validate the data and get new screenshots and make sure we were still accurate, those are actually $30 now. And then, there's examples in case the company's response has been that we're cherry picking. we're not happy to provide all the data, but just looking at averages, these averages are for, again, the 500 megabits per second service. The reason we do that, again, is because that is the only service that is offered universally at every address. These are just looking at the addresses that are in census tracts that either are low poverty, so 15% or below, or high poverty, 30% or above. And you can see a $16 a month difference to the detriment of the higher poverty communities. And it just so happened, we didn't know this, but our report was published on the 13th. On the 17th, The Markup, which is an independent media company, co-published with the Associated Press a massive study. I think they had 850,000 addresses across the US, 38 cities, including Los Angeles. They didn't look at Charter, they looked at AT&T, Verizon, CenturyLink, and Earthlink, which Earthlink actually uses Verizon wires. And they found a similar pattern, a little bit different in that AT&T is charging the same price, but they'll charge you $55 a month for extremely slow service in a high poverty community and a community of color, where they're charging $55 a month for gigabit service in a majority white, low poverty community. And so that, I don't think probably need to argue to most of you, although I'm happy to talk about it, about how that kind of thing just deeply exacerbates the digital divide. We can be investing $14.2 billion in getting people a $30 discount on their internet, but if in turn those same companies that they have to rely on to provide that internet are increasing the price by $30, $40, $50, it's gonna be a lot harder to make a dent on that. Not to mention just again, the infuriatingly unfair nature of how that works. So these are our calls to action. One is, it deserves investigation. Like, we are a group of nonprofits. We are not researchers. We do not have access or an ability to compel data from these companies. They claim that we got it wrong. Cool. They should provide the data to prove it. So there should be investigation, further investigation on in LA, in California, and I think at a national level. Our charter works in 41 states, and every single state that we have looked, we have found this exact pattern. Two is, we should make equal access the law of the land, at least in California and nationally, so that this is not legal. This should not be legal to do. Three, we should build equal access into state, county, and local procurement policy. I don't think our council member is still here, but we'll just sort of spoiler alert. The county of LA, or the city of LA, is considering a $30 million contract renewal with Charter Spectrum. That seems like a great opportunity to ask them about this and make it not a thing that's possible. You should not get $30 million of city money and be able to do this. And then lastly, we need more options. We should have community-driven options for service. It shouldn't be that you get Spectrum or you get nothing. That shouldn't be how it is. We should have options for service, and that all of the experience across the country and across the world is that when you have less monopolistic markets, you have better pricing and better service. So that's all.
Thank you, Shayna and Sanford. So we'll be moving into the town hall portion of our program now. We thought we'd kick off the conversation with some talk about mapping. So the question that we have is, the FCC has taken on the huge challenge of mapping connectivity throughout the country. So Sanford, can you share a little bit about where you are in that process and the implications you hope the new maps will have on bridging the digital divide for all Americans?
Yes, a great question. We're in the midst of a broadband proceeding where we're going to finally have broadband maps where we can kind of tell where broadband's being offered. And the beauty of that is that it'll kind of let us know, which areas have service, which areas don't. One thing, and again, in class, I tend to say things I wouldn't say in public, but since I said this in class, I'll repeat it here. But this is just me talking again, not the FCC, but just my personal opinion. It seems to me sometimes that Amazon knows better than anybody where everybody is and where everything is, better than the federal government, because they have more resources and time and energy to devote to that. So hopefully this broadband mapping proceeding will kind of give us at least a baseline to know where broadband is being offered. The beauty of the proceeding, I think, is that folks can then come in and say, well, no, it's not being offered here, so work like you do. You can say, Shayna, well, no, this is kind of wrong, kind of check this out, which is important because we need to get it right. So we're in the midst of a proceeding this month. We're going to announce, what it looks like and go forward. And one last thing I'll mention, which, you didn't ask and kind of off script a little bit, but I'm just trying to be real here. Our broadband standards are 25 megabits down and 3 up. We're going to change it hopefully to at least 125, but I have to tell you again, not the FCC, me personally, the 25.3 standard is much too low. 125 would be nice. And part of the issues that Shayna may have found out is that folks will say, generally, we have broadband, but it'll say in little letters, up to 25. So you see the 25 and think it's 25, and it's not accuse anybody of anything, but I think that's part of the issues that we've seen in the filings. So we're working on mapping now, and hopefully we can help us get to a place where we offer more robust broadband across the nation.
Thank you, Sanford. It's so critical to get accurate data, especially at the local level. Shayna, so the work that you've spearheaded was in part motivated by the discrepancy in the official maps. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how the foundation that you work for has tackled that issue?
Sure, it's a really big question. So yes, the FCC maps, I think many of us nerds can't wait to dig into those maps. I think it's important to note that one of the things that's happening is that historically, these maps have been based on something called a Form 477. Very exciting. The Form 477 is the official document that the ISPs are required to report to the FCC where they serve, right? Where they serve and meet these standards. There has been, and with all love to my FCC friends, the way that Form 477 data has worked before has been trust and never verify. So the ISPs report, the FCC map is there, and you hope for the best. This FCC mapping process is hopefully a little bit better than that, but can be a lot better than that in that between, tomorrow, I think, right, is when the first one gets released, and the third week in January, there's an opportunity for communities to actually challenge what's on there. And it's not an easy process. It's not, you can't just go on there and say, nope. It's a very difficult process, actually. But at least there's a process and a challenge process, and that really hasn't existed before. So I think one of the things that California Community Foundation, Digital Equity LA, and also in partnership with you all, along with NextGen and Common Sense, Media Alliance, the rural counties of California and others, as part of a statewide coalition, are really committed to providing technical assistance and resources so that our local communities can do the work that we need to do in order to effectively challenge the ISP maps where they need to be challenged so that FCC mapping data is accurate.
Thank you. From the Michelson side, in 2021, we partnered with the USC Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism for the Connected Communities Inclusive Growth project, which was mapping in Los Angeles, the city of Long Beach, and that was through one of our Spark grants. So that's from our end. I want to do a quick check from the audience to see if there were any questions around mapping. It looks like we have 1, 2.
Here we go.
Well, it wasn't specifically around mapping, if that's okay. My name's Alexis. I'm a trustee for a small family foundation here in Los Angeles. We give grants in the $5,000 to $25,000 range. So I'd like to know, as a small foundation with a board who, loves to do the things they love to do, how can we help further these initiatives? Is it continuing to give to the nonprofits who are directly serving constituents in the area? Is it education and advocacy? Where do we fit in as foundations?
I'll speak on part of CCF, and from where I sit, in addition to the CCF Digital Equity Initiative and the partnership at the state level, I've also worked with Michelson Silicon Valley Community Foundation and a few other funders on pulling together a philanthropic pooled fund at the state level that not only kind of pools money, but also is meant to be a kind of resource and start to build really some philanthropic knowledge and agency and kind of more energy in this sector. So one, would invite you all to participate. And then two more locally and specifically, I think there's kind of three ways that small foundations can really be helpful. One, and I'd encourage you to talk to some of our grantees in the room, but we really what a lot of these organizations need is just even a little bit of runway to be able to figure out how to engage this issue. So if you can make a $5,000 grant to a small organization to support some staff time to be able to, engage in the coalition work and get up to speed on the issue and maybe, participate at the CPUC or something, that can actually make a huge difference. The second one is that your board is probably full of people who have some influence. And so, we would be happy to come talk to your board, to send you some resources, but, have them make calls to the county board, to the city council members, have them kind of use the power of their bully pulpit and their influence on behalf of these kinds of issues and to amplify really the work that your grantees are doing in this space. And then the third thing I'd say is start to think about it, again, kind of systemically. So I know at CCF, we are thinking about this work in a number of our program areas. So we have a digital equity initiative where we have a grant program and we have programmatic work, but we also, there's a IRLA, Immigrants RLA, is an initiative that is long-standing at CCF and is starting to build digital equity kind of into that plank, and so like cross-collaborating there, and I think that's, again, really important because this is going to be a long-term thing, right? Like we're not going to just get the maps done. We're not going to just get this $6.5 billion spent. Like we're going to have to engage on this for the long term, and the only way to do that is if it's embedded in the work that we're doing.
And I would add, I co-sign everything you said. One thing that's very helpful to us is one thing I tell my class a lot, I mention that a lot, but I love teaching these students because they're so smart and into it and have such great ideas. But besides data, we need stories. Storytelling helps immensely. What do I mean? I can tell a congressman or the White House or a congresswoman or the White House or a senator, look, we need more money for broadband. But if I say, and these are true stories, I got a LinkedIn request from a student in Texas last year, I think it was, and she said, thank you so much for what you're doing with, it was EBBP then, because I was able to get a device and also to get access to the internet with a hotspot, and now I can do my homework. Which is real, and I was like, wow, that's important. We have some listening tours. We talked to a student from Baltimore who, I think her siblings were at home working online, her dad was working at home, I think her mom was working outside the home, couldn't do her homework in community college in Baltimore, had to go to Starbucks every day. Now, if you're in LA, maybe not too bad, but you're in Baltimore where it's cold and snowy and rainy sometimes, gotta go to Starbucks to do your homework? I mean, come do your Zoom classes? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. She doesn't have access. Another student, high school student, doing college applications on their phone. Now, you know how hard it is to do it on the computer, trying to do it on their phone. We gotta do better than that. So those stories help. So anytime you can get together and tell stories to us, that helps the process. We're gonna go on listening tours. We started some already, and we're gonna do some nationwide. So whenever you can, you may not be able to make it to DC, but going on those tours would be helpful. And lastly, maybe getting together with other other similarly situated folks and email us, say you want to meet with us and tell us your stories. That helps well, because just to be real with you, a lot of times we hear from folks more, and this is borne out by the record, not just my anecdotal evidence, who have the resources to pay folks to come talk to us than folks who are actually on the ground doing work and don't have those same resources. So,
Thank you both. So I wanted to take the other question in the audience, and then I want to come back to the point about stories.
Thank you. Good evening. Brenda Villanueva with the Utility Reform Network. I want to go back to broadband mapping. For those of us who are somewhat new to mapping, digital equity, these important fields, can you elaborate what is the connection between the congressionally mandated spend on broadband infrastructure, on deployment, on EBB, the ACP, and maps? Why does it matter that for the FCC to have accurate maps for our communities? That would help if you could elaborate on that. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm the FCC, so.
Turns out.
My friend asked me such a great question. It matters because there's billions of dollars that Congress has told us and NTIA to help give out to states, companies, to try to effectuate more robust broadband. The money is predicated in part on where broadband is. So if we can show with the map that broadband is not being offered in a place, then we need to invest money in that infrastructure and do things. But if broadband is being offered in a robust and complete fashion, then you're good. You don't need to do anything else. There are so many areas where we think broadband is being robustly and completely offered, but it's not. And these maps will be, at least hopefully, let us know where it's being offered and where it's not, so we know where money needs to go and where it doesn't. And from a practical standpoint, we have figures where we talk about who has broadband and who doesn't. Again, I'm trying not to get in trouble. We have a good idea, but the maps will give us a better idea. So I'll leave it there so I don't get myself in trouble. But good question.
And I would just add, again, on the I think very good point about the distance sometimes between intent and reality, and on policies and where money gets spent. So back to those sexy Form 477. So the way that it has worked so far is if, say you're in a census block, and a census block is, I don't know, a fairly small area actually. A whole census block counts as served, which means it would be ineligible for funding to bring service to it. So it counts as served if one address in that census block could, within 10 business days, be wired. It doesn't even have to mean that that one address has service or subscribes to that service. One address could be wired or could get service within 10 business days. Whole census block counts as served. So if you think about kind of dense urban communities, if you think about census blocks with apartment buildings or things like that, it starts to add up very quickly about the overstatement of service, right? And then sort of similarly, if, say, within a given census block, imagine there are 2 addresses in the census block, which is almost never true, but just for ease and simplicity, if one address could, within 10 business days, be served by, let's just say, Charter Spectrum, and the other address in that, and no one else, and the other address in that census block could, within 10 business days, theoretically, be served by AT&T, that whole census block is marked as competitive. So you'll see, if you start kind of paying attention to press and things on this, that you'll see a lot of stuff around what percentage of LA County is served and what percentage of LA County is competitive. Whenever you read that, kind of keep that in mind. These maps are wildly overstating, and we know this anecdotally. We know this in particular in apartment communities, but we know that this is true. And so one of the things kind of on this mapping question, and why, again, it's so important, is we actually need to tell a real story about where that service actually is, what it looks like for an apartment building. And if you have an apartment building of an address, that's a single address of, say, 200 families living in an apartment building, which is not all that uncommon, and it's unserved, those are 200 unserved, right? That's not one, that's 200 unserved. So all of those things have huge implications for if money is going to be deployed in a way that actually executes on the intent of these billions of public dollars to close the digital divide.
Thank you. So.
Could I step? We have one more.
Oh, yes, go
Is
ahead.
that okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Shayna, for answering one of my questions about whether the FCC maps would be census level block data. Sanford, do you envision a time when the FCC will collect household level data and the burden of proof won't be on communities unserved to provide the data that they are unserved? And what will it take if so?
Good question. That would be nice. As a practical matter, and even with the IIJA, a lot of times you see that things are negotiated and depends on who's in charge and how things work. I don't know if that'll happen in the near future, but I think that what you mentioned would be the most efficient and effective way for us to get information. So I don't see that happening. I haven't heard that happen, that being on the road in the near future is something happening, but I wholeheartedly agree that that would be the best way. And oftentimes too, we put the burden on folks who are at least able to shoulder it, and that's just, that it is what it is. We try to do what we can, especially as regulators who really care to work around that and do what we can to help. But as a practical matter, the basis of your question is right. We put too much burden on folks, and it's not going to happen anytime soon, but it's something that hopefully will happen. And just to kind of make an analogy to things happening, we've been talking for years at the FCC, the chairwoman and me and my different jobs in the school board and the FCC about how broadband should be a utility, and folks are like, blah, 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 we don't want to hear it. But now, when the pandemic hits everybody, it's like, oh, maybe you were right. So it's one of those things where it may take time, but in order to get there, we need advocacy from folks, to let folks know in Congress and the Hill and locally, that's important.
Any other audience questions? Oh, great. You guys are making my job easy. I don't have to use any of the prepared questions.
Hello, my name is Josue. Just to touch on what you mentioned earlier in the presentation, given that Los Angeles has multiple broadband and mobile providers across a variety of technologies, why does the report only focus on a specific company and one connectivity technology? It seems to address only the promotion customers receive from one company and ignores all the other providers and connectivity products like mobile service.
So that's a great question. Thank you. So when we set out to look at this, what we said was we're going to look at every company that serves at least 1.5% of LA households, or that claims to serve. So we're looking at residential service that is at least 1.5% of LA County households. And we went with their data. We went with the ISP data. Like, what do they claim? And to find that out, we looked at what they report to the CPUC. So they have mandatory reporting to the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission. And it turns out that Charter Spectrum claims to serve 97% of LA County households. The next largest provider of residential service is AT&T, and that was at just under 20%, I think. I'm looking for some other folks. Something like 20%. And then the third was Frontier at 15%. After that, it dropped below 1.5%. The next one was Cox, and I think that was at like just under 1%, and they serve Rancho Palos Verdes and like some neighborhoods in Torrance. We did also, for awareness, but we didn't publish it because we didn't have enough data points. We did also go shopping for service on Verizon because Verizon is the biggest mobile provider, and they're making a big push actually on their residential service, their fixed wireless service. We just didn't find enough addresses where they were offering that service to say anything about it. It didn't seem fair.
And I'll jump in real quick. One thing I'll say, you may notice that I'm not going to comment on anything particular because I'm an impartial regulator. So I'm just listening. But I appreciate all information. It's very, 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 very helpful. So just so you know.
Noted.
And one more.
Thank you, guys. My name is Christopher Gabriel, former executive director of POWER, People Organized for Westside Renewal, a grantee of the California Community Foundation and a former seed fund member of the Liberty Foundation. So thank you, California Community Foundation, for all the great work that you do, because you do make Los Angeles a better place. So, and thank you for this discussion. And my question is a little bit more with the community organizer in me in strategy. There are some new programs out there like ACP that kind of help reduce or eliminate the cost of broadband. So again, the strategy, why not have, with CCF's connection to not just resources, but also organizations and in turn people, right, folks in the community, why not connect with providers and work on figuring out ways to get some of these programs more completely and fully adopted in the community? right? More fully implemented. And then on that same thread, why not also figure out a way or kind of focus on a way to get these programs to be more sustainable? Because you guys have power to get things done. Why not also have that as a part of the strategy? Thank you.
Can someone bring me my wine for this question? A few things. One is just from a kind of philosophical perspective, California Community Foundation works on systems change level solutions. And it is our very strong belief that we are not going to coupon our way out of the digital divide. So while we believe that the ACP, the EBB before it, and the ACP now are kind of important, could potentially important interim steps, that kind of putting a lot of political energy into continuing to put billions of public dollars, and I don't know if folks are aware of how ACP works, but so the way it works is if you believe you are eligible, you need to go enroll, and there is a process by which you have to basically affirm that you are eligible, and that's enrolling. And then once you are enrolled, you need to go to a participating ISP. That's important, a participating ISP, and you have to enroll in a program with them. You have to get service from them as an ACP enrollee. Now, it is on the ISP's responsibility. So when you call the salesperson, you better hope you get a salesperson who's been trained on what the heck ACP is, which for anybody here, I see Paulina from Everyone On, which has done yeoman's work in this enrollment process, and would encourage you to talk to her. That's kind of a crapshoot. You don't know that you're going to get somebody who's been trained at the ISP on what the ACP is and how to get you enrolled in an appropriate program. There's also been tons of anecdotes and evidence that ISPs are upselling folks. So you call and say, I want to apply my ACP benefit to this $30 a month, 100 megabit service that I saw you advertise. But then when you actually go to sign up for it, what you get sold is a much more expensive, maybe a bundle with cable that you didn't call for. So from a systems, if what you care about is systems change, it is not our belief that that program is going to be systems change. Not to mention that those $30 don't go to the households. Those $30 are a check from the government to the ISP. And if you really want to deeply nerd out, I would encourage you to go to the last, call it 7 quarters of Securities and Exchange Commission reports from these ISPs, and every single one of them reports every participating one reports their ACP and before it EBB participation as a significant boost to their bottom line. So these are public dollars going to boost the bottom line of these companies in ways that certainly help some people, but not all the people it's intended to, and is definitely not a systems change solution. On top of all of that, we look at pricing data, and again, if what these companies have done, even in a small number of places, right? Let's just say that we accidentally found the few places where this is true, where they're increasing the price of their best service by $30 to the people who benefit from the ACP, then you are still subsidizing a totally broken system. So I could go on and on, but there's that. And then the kind of second piece of that is we believe there's already a ton of really good work happening, right? The county is spending upwards of $5 million to support ACP enrollment. There's a lot of public money going towards ACP enrollment, and we support organizations that do that, but we don't believe that is the systems change focus.
We got a couple more. Time for them. Did you?
Actually, I think my question was somewhat answered by that, but I am from Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA, and we believe that government-owned services are not the solution to this problem. They are low quality. And so we do believe that the fastest, cheapest, most effective solution would be using networks that already exist. And so again, I feel like this is a repeat of the previous question to some extent, but LA County is considering implementing bulk subscription services. So they would buy a bunch of subscriptions from internet service providers. and then give them to free for people that live in the county that are most in need. I know that CCF doesn't endorse these bulk subscriptions, and I think you kind of just answered that question, but I was wondering if there was any more that you could elaborate on that, kind of why you guys don't endorse that, and talk a little bit about that service.
Sure. Abby? Hi. I'm good friends with Abby's dad. So I want to first push back on a premise. In fact, there is massive amounts of evidence from California and from all over the country that municipal broadband is highly effective. There are a whole bunch of ways that government-owned network, that publicly owned networks can operate, that every place that they do it takes a little while, right? But over time, every single one of those networks turns out to deliver better service at lower cost, more equitably than not. And so I want to push back on the VICA premise that government networks don't work. They do. And then in terms of that, why we don't endorse kind of a bulk purchasing, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble. Is anyone from LAUSD here? Okay, I don't want anybody in trouble. But I will, I'll just speak in generalities. So there is a $50 million contract with Charter as right of first refusal, and then AT&T in a bulk services agreement to provide internet service to households within a particular population that don't have it at home, right? Awesome. Because again, we are not going to coupon our way out of it. We are not going to corporate welfare our way out of this problem. One of the things that's happening in that program, in addition to others that we're aware of, is that there are significant numbers of people for whom, at any price, they cannot be served. Either they can't be served because even though they're in a census block that is technically marked as served, their location isn't in fact wired, because they live in an apartment building where the wiring doesn't go through all of the apartments, because maybe at some point during the pandemic they were unable to pay their bills and so they're in arrears, and so no one can pay to get them back on unless they cover their arrears. And it is a sizable percentage of households that just are skipped over by that. And so it is our view that by continuing to spend public dollars with these companies that are discriminating in this way, that is not the systemic solution that we need.
Well, good evening. Pastor Andre Chappell, Faith Church LA, and CEO of African American Empowerment Coalition, also a board member of National Diversity Coalition. I firsthand deal with this, boots on the ground. Been able to serve over 2,000 people in the last year. I'm on Crenshaw, I'm in the hood. We really do the work for the hard to reach, the hardly reached communities. A couple questions. One, you mentioned pretty much the service that the LAUSD is in partnership with AT&T and Charter.
I didn't say that.
Oh, I thought you just mentioned something about LAUSD. And, well, they do have an all families connected program that's no cost for the kids that you were just talking about to have services at home. Did your report, did you include any of that in your report? Because we've been pushing ACP with the FCC for about a year really hard. We've helped over 1,000 people get connected and adopted. And so I'm looking for some of this data in your report too, because them numbers are staggering. I think everybody in here has a stomachache listening to you share that stuff. So I'm really want to dig into some of the other programs that are supporting and helping out that I don't think were mentioned.
So I just want to be very clear, because I think this is being recorded. I didn't say it was the LAUSD program. But I would encourage you to ask some questions about that. In terms of why it wasn't in the report, so we could write 27 reports, and this report could have been 7,000 pages long. As it is, I think it was like 50 pages long, with the last 20 pages being data tables. So this particular report is very focused on this particular issue, on discrimination in terms of what is advertised, what price and what service is advertised in what communities. That said, again, I think we talked a little bit about the ACP and why, first of all, like why we are not a proponent of that as the long-term systemic solution. But also, we did actually, if you read the report, one of the elements that we raise is the extent to which these practices might be really undermining the effectiveness at a large scale of things like the ACP. And that is both in terms of, again, as we mentioned, the sort of like increasing the price by $30 or more for the households that are then getting the $30 discount. Like at that point, all you've done is really a wealth transfer of public money to a private company. But also that they're not consistently advertising it where it is most needed. And then I totally lost my train of thought. I'll come back to it. But there is within the report, we've dedicated, there's sort of 3 different areas of impact analysis, and one of them is on the ACP. Oh, I remember mine. So the other thing around ACP, and this actually gets back to your question too, is there's actually now, it's been enough time, and we've had enough experience for there to be quite a bit of data on the impact of these programs. And Dr. Hernan Galperin at USC did a review of a very large data set on the impact of the EBB, which is the precursor to ACP. So it was $50 a month, and then it dropped to $30 a month in the ACP. When it was the EBB, the overwhelming evidence is that it maybe helped make it more affordable for people who already had service, but it was wildly ineffective in terms of connecting people who are not yet connected. So again, on the question of kind of at scale, is that going to be what solves the problem? No.
And I'll jump in for a second here too. I was trying to think of a way to kind of make an analogy to make folks understand some of the things Shayna's talking about. What we did with the ABBP and with ACP has helped some folks, no doubt. Some folks have been helped, no question, especially with folks like you, boots on the ground. But the analogy I was thinking of, and it's maybe not quite a great analogy, but I'll use it anyway. Hey, why not? It's kind of like if the ACP or what government's doing is like food, and people are hungry. I don't eat meat. So if you give me a hamburger, maybe half of us can get fed, but I still need to get fed some other way. Or if you bring shrimp and I'm allergic, I can't eat. So you can't just have one way to go about things. The ACP, I'm proud of our work with that, but I will tell you publicly and I'm public now, so I guess I'm telling you publicly, it's not enough. Municipal broadband, somebody mentioned, that is so, can I say it? Yeah, I can say it. It's so effective. There's not enough of it around, but we need that. We need things other than just what we're doing. So some of the programs we're doing, like ACP, are very helpful and useful, but what gets lost in the sauce, so to speak, is that we need so much more to do what we need to do. And it really almost infuriates me to hear folks say, well, we're doing this, and look, pat us on the back, whatever. No, that's good, but it's not enough. So we need everything. We need some of the things Shayna's talking about, some other things that are going on with municipal broadband, boots on the ground, and lots of other things to get this job done. So.
Just one other thing, I think that if we could get to policy that says maybe like price transparency, equal pricing. There are places all around the world that actually have a mandate of the same price, so you cannot charge a different price for the same service. If we had some of those kinds of things in place as consumer protection, I think we'd be all about the ACP and those kinds of things.
Thank you both. So just to do a quick time check, we have time for one more question, and then I wanted to give you both an opportunity to share if you had one kind of call to action from each of your perspectives on what people can take home and do next. So we'll have our final question.
Good, I'm glad. I'm Faith Bautista, the CEO of the National Diversity Coalition, and we're about collaboration, and thank you so much for having this, even though I'm freezing to death. I'm learning, and this is good. I mean, we need to do a lot more of this. Shayna, the report is really bothersome to me because we cannot do that, right? You cannot charge more to the rich people, to the people that are underserved. It's not fair, but is that really true, right? I mean, I find that hard to believe. But regardless, what I'm really asking from all of us, between the FCC, I mean, I am so involved with, because I'm on CEDC, right, the EBB, ACP, we've done thousands of this outreach from Nevada all the way to Northern California. I mean, we're chasing people, we're putting flyers in the windshield. How about all of us collaborating? How about finding a solutions on helping this low moderate income? We just had our conference and Sanford was there. It was so nice to see that, Miss Faith, we got approved by Spectrum. And then, they have this Spectrum One that is $50. And when you add this layer, the ACP, they're only going to pay $20. So we cannot help everyone. Sometimes it's like almost impossible. I would never have. But LA have a great infrastructure. I think this is, I moved here from San Francisco, but I'm liking it now.
Welcome to the best part of California.
And I go to church in the hood, whereas I've never heard the word hood before, but now I understand what hood is. And they're the one that needs a lot of this ACP. So I think I'm asking if we can, all of us, put together our resources, do a lot of this marketing and outreach, because you're right, there's not a lot of people that don't know EBB, and they changed it to ACP. They probably don't know what ACP is. But if all the organizations that, on your, from Curren and everybody else, and all the National Diversity Coalition, and the churches, Pastor Jack here, they have 40,118 Hispanic evangelical churches audited. There are more churches Hispanic than Starbucks. If we use them for all of this, I think we can really increase the adoption. And of course, the affordability is another problem. But I'm really asking for all of us, let's work together, let's collaborate. No more of that Asian hate, no more of that George Floyd. Let's all love together and work together. Thank you.
Thank you. So to both of you, what would your call to action be to the folks here tonight?
You sure? You go first. I'll go first.
So I think my call to action would be I guess three things. One, join us. The Digital Equity LA Coalition is a very large coalition. We do a lot of work together. We also collaborate very closely with the GPS and Collective Action Group and a bunch of other networks. And we are, as far as we can tell and what we hear based on kind of income, and kind of unique in the country in terms of our focus on really building power, building capacity within a broad cross-sectoral set of organizations that are really fundamentally focused on equity. So join us. digitalequityla.org is the homegrown grassroots don't judge website, and I would invite you to join us. And we have an advocacy action team, we have a communications action team, we have monthly coalition meetings, we organize conversations with legislators, we show up at the county board, we do research, we have education and webinars, all kinds of things. Also, commit to engaging at a systemic level. Like yes, love all of the work on the ACP and on this sort of like individual level. This is not going to change until we have systemic change, and we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity right now with so much, literally historic levels of money at the state level, at the federal level, that if we spend it well, we could actually close the digital divide for generations. To do that is going to require a very deep level of systems change, awareness, and approach. So join us and become a party at the CPUC. I know the National Diversity Coalition is. A number of folks in the room are our partners at Turner providing technical assistance, again, supported by the pooled fund we mentioned. So really dig in at that systemic level. And then the third thing I would say is, I'm trying to think the most, people who work with me a lot know that being politic is not my strength. I'm going to try really hard. Be skeptical. So I hear you on like, you don't think that's true. I would invite you to look at the data. I would invite you to, we work closely with Destination Crenshaw. They're part of our coalition. We have been working closely with Andre in Compton. We go to your communities, put your address in the website, find out for yourself. Look at what they're offering in Compton versus what they're offering in Mar Vista. You don't have to take my word for it. Go look. But if you want to take my word for it, we also have shown all of our work. We have screenshots for literally every single data point. If you look at the report, again, the last 20 pages is nothing but data tables where we just show you the numbers that we found. So there is there is an extraordinary marketing budget at all of these companies. They spend it very well. Be skeptical and really take the time to kind of dig in and learn more, because this is a complicated space, and it is admittedly kind of difficult to get the details right, but really important right now. So join us, look at systems, and be skeptical.
Great job. Well, I have lots of things I could say, but I'll try to keep it brief. 3 points. I spoke at UCLA Law School on this issue last week, and one thing I implored the students to do was, and what I implore you to do, is tell your stories loudly and broadly. And I specifically told them, be a voice for the voiceless. To my students who are learning the law, and to you all here, you all have skills and talents and abilities and ability to reach out and talk to folks that other folks don't have. Use your voices, be a voice for the voiceless, because if not you, then who? That's the first thing. Second thing, I've become a big advocate for mental health based on some of the work I've done in the hospitals, school systems, and other things on my job. And one thing I told my staff not too long ago, and I tell them a lot, I use quotes every day, I send them a quote every day. I told them, you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And some of them were like, why'd you say that? I was like, well, because a lot of times folks in this space and folks doing what you're doing, you work so hard and, you're here in the cold weather. Now, this is comfortable to me. I'm good. But I know it's kind of cold for you all here. But you're here in the cold weather, and the fact that you're here and still sitting here means that you're committed. But if you don't take care of yourselves, you can't help others. So I know you have families and friends or whatever. So work hard, do what you need to do, but also take care of yourselves. It's very important. And then the third thing, something I mentioned at the Turn event, which I kind of came up with myself, kind of proud of, but don't want to get too much of a big head. Thank you. But make sure that, well, before I get to that point, something I didn't mention, which I meant to mention, is that there are two entities we kind of disregard totally in talking about digital discrimination and equity. One, tribal lands, where it's atrocious about the digital resources there, which I really want to focus on in our proceeding. I hope that folks pay attention to. And folks with disabilities. We often lose sight of those folks. I think 1 in 4 folks, according to the CDC, has a disability, and there are lots of times when they can't get access, and we don't really think about that. So that's something that's very important. Again, I guess my last point is that we're doing this work because your zip code should not determine your digital destiny. Where you live should not determine the access to broadband and how robust it is. So work hard to make sure that everybody has equal access. Some way we can all vote, and some way we can all, go through this world and do what we need to do. We should have the ability as a human right to be able to have access to equitable broadband. So those are my 3 points. Take care of your mental health, for sure. Be a voice for the voiceless. And folks, zip code should not determine their digital destiny, and work hard to prevent that. And that's it.
Thank you both. Let's have a round of applause for both of our speakers tonight.